The coping mechanisms that you learned to stay ahead of pain in the past are not the qualities or the mechanisms that are going to help you expand into your fullness, into your radiance, into what you truly desire. Healing often requires safety, but expansion, that requires you to leave the comfort zone that you have created and step back into the unknown once again. And so this is where the nervous system suddenly feels threatened, and the psyche as well. We're not talking about that enough. Expansion destabilizes identity. And I think sacred women feel this deeply. Welcome, love, to Wild Flow, the podcast for wild and wise women devoted to honoring your body's wisdom, reclaiming your cyclical power, and walking as a feminine leader in life, love, and through your soul work and purpose. I'm Charlotte Puanto, embodiment coach, ritual priestess, menstrual cycle educator, and feminine business mentor, here to guide soul-led women to step forward as their most magical, womb-awakened, authentic, and sovereign selves. On the podcast, we have rich and deep conversations with women I deeply admire who are leading the way in the reclamation of sacred feminine power. Ready for a new episode, my love? Let's flow. Hi, my love, and welcome back to Wild Flow podcast with me, Charlotte Puanto. I'm really looking forward to today's conversation. It's one of those that's been quietly weaving itself through my work for years, but it's only been quite recently that I've found the language to really capture the essence of it and to give me another framework for understanding it. And so when I came across this, my whole body went, oh, this is what I've been seeing with the women that I support and hold space for. This is such a core piece of the work that I do. And it's so much of what I've been working through myself. And today I want to talk about shadow work. And not only shadow in the way that most people think about it, not the darkness of it and the shame, the wounds, the grief, the rage, fear, trauma, but the golden shadow as well. The radiant parts of ourselves that we learned have been unsafe to fully embody or even recognize that we have. And that includes our beauty, eros and sensuality, leadership and authority, sacredness, creativity, brilliance, and desire to be deeply seen. And I think that this is honestly one of the deepest reasons why sacred women who are space holders, guides, coaches, who are running their own businesses, who have to show up in their work as themselves powerfully in vulnerability. I think that this is why we circle the edge of our next level for sometimes years. And it's nothing to do with laziness or making excuses. It's not about not being capable. It's not even about not having capacity. It's not about lack of self-belief even. It's because becoming more fully who you are threatens your identity and the structures that have kept you safe before. So this is really important for sacred space holders, priestesses, coaches, healers, guides, creatives, women who are walking deeply devotional paths. Because what stops you leading at the full level, the full embodiment and the full expression of your most authentic self, your most powerful self, at the level that you really want to be at, it's not just fear, it's your magnificence, it's your brilliance. So why is this not just about these things like fear and self-doubt? It's about shadow. So let's start there. In depth psychology, shadow does not simply mean what is bad. Shadow is what is unconscious. It is outside of your awareness. It's real. It's what is absolutely real and very true about you. It's not what you try to hide because you don't like it and you feel like you'd be judged if other people saw it in you. It's what you actually have no idea about you. And it's what some psychologists call the sinister shadow, the first part, the part that you're most familiar with. It's the shame that lives in you, the jealousy, rage, the wounds that you haven't explored yet, and the way that they have shaped you, and the things that have been buried in your psyche. It's the impulses that you reject. So it's a deeper truth about you that your ego self has severed out of consciousness and buried so that you're not aware of it, because this protects you. So there's that part we're going to talk about, but then there's also the golden shadow. And this too is what is completely unknown to you, but it's not sinister as they call it. It's not dark as some people refer to it as. It's the light side of shadow. It's still what's unconscious, but it's the true soul gifts that you have, the talents that you have. It might be your psychic abilities, for example. It might be your ability to lead groups. It might be your beauty and eros and sensuality, your power and strength and physicality that you've never had tested. It could be your intellect. It could be your absolute brilliance. And the way that these are in you, they are traits and characteristics that you have not only not integrated, you don't believe that you have. A good one is your creativity. So if you're someone who's like, I'm just not creative, I can't do it, I'm not creative, it's like, it's not me. You look at somebody else and you're like, she's creative, but yeah, not me. Then this is part of your golden shadow. And the reason, again, that we exile these parts is because at some point they felt dangerous to embody. And usually this is going back to childhood. So again, these were qualities that have been shaped out of you. It hasn't been safe to express them. And so your ego, part of your psyche, has split this from you, from consciousness, and buried it in the back of your mind. So it's things that you possess if you were to work with them, if you were to practice them. But really, it's about understanding your identity. It's like reconfiguring your sense of self, like who you identify as and how attached you are to the identity that you have. And it's about exploring from this place of recognizing, remembering, like soul remembering that you have this. And not only that, but this is like one of your greatest powers. I think that many women are much more comfortable identifying with wounds than with this golden shadow. And this is partly why we can appear to be self-sabotaging ourselves or keeping ourselves small. For example, it can feel a lot more easy to say, oh, I'm overwhelmed. I don't have capacity. I don't have enough certificates. I'm still in my healing journey. I'm anxious or traumatized or overwhelmed, or I'm deep in a season of motherhood, for example, which is obviously beautiful. But at the point where we say we reject our own path, our own growth, our own inner soul work, and stepping into our own gifts and brilliance because no, we have this other job right now. The ways that we sort of not excuse, because it's very real and it's very meaningful, but the way that we say, oh, that's not me, that's not who I am, that's not what I value, and this is where I'm at right now. It's easier to say this than to fully acknowledge these truths that can live in the golden shadow. I want to be visible. I want to be seen. I want to be known. I want to be really well known. I want to be the go-to person. I want to lead. I want to be well paid. I want to be at the top of my game. I want to be desired. I want to, lead. I have medicine. I want to really step in and do this. I want to lead a community of this size. I want to create a training around this expertise. It's easier to say that we are stuck in this place than to fully acknowledge the fullness of our dreams, because pain can feel familiar, but acknowledging our radiance, that means things have to change. So I want to say something carefully here, because this is nuanced. Healing work deeply matters. Understanding trauma matters. Doing our nervous system regulation work matters. Creating safety in our bodies, in our family, in our home, in our society, in our day-to-day, it really matters. And learning how to hold ourselves really matters too. But over identifying with the wounds that we've carried and being in a healing process, it can quietly become another form of limitation, because the coping mechanisms that you learned to stay ahead of pain in the past are not the qualities or the mechanisms that are going to help you expand into your fullness, into your radiance, into what you truly desire. I'll give you some examples. So, if you have had to be a hyper independent woman in your past, you can't rely on anyone. You have to take full care. You have to be so vigilant. You have to be like fully mature before you are ready. If you are hyper independent, that might have protected you in the past, but it's now going to stop you from receiving intimacy, support, and collaboration. The things that you need to grow your work, to grow your business, to call in the support that is going to help you, because you can't do it all yourself, even though you've been doing that before. What worked then is not going to take you to that next place. Over preparing might have protected you from being judged, from being scolded if you're not a straight A student. Making sure that you can't be caught out, you can't be wronged, you can't be flawed. Like nothing can stick to you. That could have protected you really well in the past. But now that is going to absolutely stop you from launching any of your offers into the world and actually making any money, getting any clients. Staying endlessly humble might have protected you in the past, because you're constantly dismissing the ways that you're excellent, the ways that you're brilliant, like dismissing your intellect, like, oh, no, if someone compliments you because you did well in something, or you're good at something, or they admire something in you, like dismissing it, not being able to take compliments. This staying humble might seem like it's really coming from a place of integrity, but it was really about protecting your belonging, right? And also stopping you from anyone being able to take you down, like the tall poppy, not being able to take you down. But now that is stopping you from fully inhabiting your leadership. Part of leading is saying, yeah, this is what I know, and I'm here to share it. And the way I do things is my own unique way. And I have something to share. Come closer. I'd love to offer this to you. Leading requires you to be accountable, to put yourself out there in a way that, other people might challenge you or not agree with what you've said. Or if you do make a mistake, people are going to see it and they're going to want you to step in and remediate that, right? If you're being humble, you are stopping yourself from even being in the position where you might be able to step into that kind of leadership. Healing often requires safety, but expansion, that requires you to leave the comfort zone that you have created and step back into the unknown once again. And so this is where so many women get stuck. And I've seen it time and time and time and time again. Like, maybe this is you, and maybe this is a girlfriend or a soul sister or other people you've been in and containers with, where people have got all of the certificates and they still aren't putting their work out there. They're still not even maybe seeing the fullness of their, like what they're really capable of. They're like dismissing compliments or like, oh, I'm not ready yet, or, even taking their time to complete trainings. And this might be you. Okay. So is this where you're keeping yourself stuck because it's comfortable to keep saying that you're still learning, you're still in the safety container where you're not actually required to put yourself out there? If this is you, then this is really hopefully going to be medicine for you. Another side of this is manifestation. It's super easy to talk about when it's abstract. If you think about, how we might talk about the new moon, for example, setting a new intention. At the start of a year, you might choose a word of the year or do a vision board. You might be journaling, you might be doing your gratitude practices, you might be crafting altars, you might be working with abundance. You might be setting goals in your work. You might have big visions and plans, but the date keeps changing, right? Because declaring your desires is easy. Even setting goals, like that might feel a bit uncomfortable because it's like threatening some action, but you're still only in the talking about it phase. Actually taking action, that genuinely risks vulnerability. That's moving into the doing and being seen phase, not just doing the inner work. And so this is where the nervous system suddenly feels threatened, and the psyche as well. We're not talking about that enough. It's not just the nervous system. Obviously, the brain is part of the nervous system. The brain controls the nervous system, but it's the psyche that feels threatened. And this is where the ego wants to be protected and protect itself. And this is where we sever things off into the shadow or keep the shadow repressed, and we keep it behind us, the long bag that we are carrying behind us, full of all of the things that we don't want anyone else to see. And we can't even see ourselves because it lives in the shadow. The shadow is always behind us, right? Expansion destabilizes identity. And I think sacred women feel this deeply. We can talk about it in terms of the witch wound, and I've talked about that on the podcast before, or the priestess wound, or the healer wound, or the feminine wound, whatever you want to think of it as. Actually, really, that is one flavor of this more universal wound. That is the wound, the psychological of the human experience, that is about the brain, the psyche, the body, the nervous systems programming default practice of wanting to find safety. And so having to step out of that safety, we have to cultivate as a new practice. And when we're thinking about leading, questions can suddenly emerge like, if I lead more visibly, am I now accountable for getting everything right? What if I say the wrong thing? What if I get judged? What if I get cancelled? If I become brighter, how might that threaten my relationships, my main primary relationship, my safety and security in my relationship, my friendships? How does it threaten my belonging? If I fully act like the authority that I actually am and I have earned because I hold expertise, does that make me arrogant? Like, how many of us in the spiritual space, particularly, like we resent guru culture? And, but at the same time, the flip side of that is we resent the guru in ourselves. We're afraid of the guru in ourselves, and that we all have an inner guru that lives in our shadow. It's the two-sided thing. It's the sinister shadow, that's the harmful aspect of the guru, but the golden shadow, the part of us that genuinely is a wise teacher and has much to share. Does it make us arrogant? Does it stop us being spiritual? Does it mean that we're just full of shit? If we actually act, embody, claim, share our knowledge and expertise, how does that threaten my integrity? Will people think I'm an egoic if I stop minimizing myself? What if I finally earn more money and I'm still not happy? Yeah. What about that one? Not just like learning again that we can't trust ourselves with money, but fundamentally that it doesn't buy happiness in whatever way that we kind of hoped that, if I make this much money, I'll be able to do this. Okay, sure. But does it bring happiness? What if I launch the offering and nobody comes? I've got to put my own hand up here. This is such a thing for me. And if you've been following my work, my Instagram, if you've been listening to this for a while, I do launch programs quite often. And it's deep shadow work. It's ego work. It's embodiment work for me to launch. Like the fear that no one's going to come, so freaking real for me. Okay. Because we're risking our sense of identity, our sense of capacity, our sense of worth. We're risking belonging. For me, I feel like the ultimate at the bottom of this, it's at the bottom of the feeling of what if I'm not worthy? What if I'm not good enough? What if I'm rejected? It's the feeling of humiliation, that pain of humiliation, and how that goes back to childhood experiences that I had. And I'm sure we've all had experiences of being humiliated, exposed and humiliated. That is what I freaking hate feeling and will do as much as I can to absolutely avoid it. Simply not showing up, freezing, self-sabotaging, hiding, or it can look like doing the inner work, the nervous system work, the embodiment work, the shadow work, to be resourced through that. So risking rejection, exposure, humiliation, shame, it can feel a lot safer to just not challenge ourselves at all. Like we might choose to, but our bodies might do it anyway from a nervous system point of view, might freeze, might collapse, we might shut down. We might, though, consciously hide, stay in preparation, training mode, stay refining, tweaking the website, rewriting the offer page, the emails, doing some more social media, not showing up on camera, staying almost ready, talking about doing the thing, but not actually doing it, not hiring the support. This is another one, not hiring the support. And like a coach, for example, who is going to actually hold you accountable and support you and give you the tools and the safety, and stretch that safety as you then do the things you've been talking about doing. I'm not talking about more trainings. I'm talking about experiences, support that hold you as you go and do the thing. If we never have to fully discover what might happen, if we fully step forwards, then that's safe. That's known. I think this is where women confuse avoidance with discernment and humility, because like what we call humility, what we call discernment, can so often actually just be a mask for a fear of being accountable, being exposed, and being visible. I think this distinction matters. The ego is what we consciously know and actively manage or protect. So let's now go into ego versus shadow. Okay. So the image, the identity, the role, the personality structure, you can often see the parts of your ego that feel uncomfortable or vulnerable. For example, maybe you hate hearing your own voice, and so you avoid showing up on camera or doing a podcast. This was me. But I'll come on to this, but this is why doing a podcast has been such incredible healing shadow work, and ego work for me. So if you know this, if you hate hearing your voice, and so then you avoid showing up on camera, you avoid speaking on your reels, you avoid going on podcasts, you don't want to get up in front of a group because you're like cringing at what other people think about your voice. That's an example of protecting your ego. Perhaps you don't trust yourself to speak naturally during a meditation. And so you script every line word for word, even though everyone's eyes are closed. This was also me when I first started holding circles, like 8 years ago. When I started doing workshops for students and at university far out 20 years ago, I would follow a script. I would write out my meditations as well and knew that people's eyes were closed. And so I could deliver that. I could articulate that. I could pace that. I didn't need to rely on trusting my intuition and my channel in the moment. I could just script it. So, yeah, like the ways that we learn coping mechanisms. It's not wrong. It's just the ways that we protect the parts of ourselves that we're uncomfortable seeing ourselves and letting other people see. Okay. Shadow is completely different, like I've been saying. Shadow is completely outside of our conscious awareness. It is true, but we genuinely can't see it in ourselves. Example, I found out last year at the age of 39 and a half, to be specific, that I'm neurodivergent. I had no freaking idea I was autistic and ADHD. I mean, let's be real, it had been a dawning realization for a few years. The more and more I'd been learning, the more women around me had been sharing about their neurodivergence, the more like guests I had on this podcast, for example. I was like, but like I had no idea for like 37 years, let's just say 38 years, no idea whatsoever. And then it became it like it left my shadow and now it's in my conscious awareness. So it's what's true, but we can't see in ourselves. And we often discover clues to our shadow through the intensity of our reactions to other people. For example, if I'm triggered by a neurodivergent person and I'm like, oh my God, can they not just get their shit together? Like, why is that person with ADHD like so impulsive or forgetful or whatever, whatever, whatever? And actually, that lives in me, but I've learned to mask so freaking hard to cover that up. That is shadow. So it can come in these ways of where we're like repelled by other people, but also through admiration. You might have been placing a wise teacher on a pedestal. Like, think of someone who you've been learning a lot from. You admire them. They're like a demi celebrity. There's somebody who you're like, wow. Not only do they like know so much and they're so wise, but you really admire maybe the business they've built or the community they've built or the legacy that they've built. And you put them right up on a pedestal. And then something happens. There's a moment where you perceive their humanity in a way, or they're sort of like something happens where you feel like they make a choice or take an action that you don't feel is in coherence with that level of like divinity that you've maybe put them on. When they reveal themselves to be human, you're like a bit devastated. You're like, oh shit. They kind of fall a bit from grace in your eyes. So what is it in her that you were admiring in her, but then also waiting to criticize? Maybe it's the way that you quietly ache to embody the same confidence, creativity, sensuality, authority, sexuality in another woman. And you're like, I don't have that. I don't have that at all. But like, I kind of wish I did. Or I can't believe she would act like that. Sometimes it's through judgment. Perhaps you feel activated by seeing a woman online who's like, you might have more training than her, more experience, more expertise, right? But she's charging confidently an astronomical amount of money and speaking with absolute certainty about her work. Consciously, you might be disgusted by her arrogance or her greed, right? By her capitalism when she's meant to be in service. But underneath that reaction is an unconscious, disowned part of you that also longs to feel bold, powerful, unapologetic, fully expressed, deeply valued, um, like so certain in her expertise and leadership, who like is so happy being seen. Perhaps you're judging a woman who fully embodies her sexuality. Maybe she is somebody who you follow on Instagram and she does like these really like tantric practices. Maybe she is someone who wears like very revealing clothes. Maybe she's a full-blown like sex worker and you're judging her. You're like, wow, like how could she have no um like self-respect? She's giving her body away. But underneath this, in a hidden part of you, a part that you would absolutely deny is there, is actually the part of you that longs for greater permission to inhabit your own eros. And maybe it was shamed and something you had to sever from, you know, earlier in your life. Maybe it's a part that you have just never accessed. So, this is what makes shadow work like so confronting. And it can be, particularly when it's not held, not guided, when it's too fast, too soon. Because what intensely activates us in others is often information about ourselves, both the sinister shadow and the golden shadow. And so this is where it gets really interesting. Now I want to talk about soul versus spirit, because honestly, this is soul work. And one of the ways I want to, like, I understand this is through the distinction between soul and spirit. And I think, you know, these are all words and phrases that we hear a lot in like this realm of work. If you're, you know, doing this kind of work, if you're curious about a spiritual path or a spiritual practice, if you're, you know, doing spiritual guiding yourself, you know, there's a lot of talk and people use these words sometimes quite interchangeably, soul and spirit. So I believe, I feel, I appreciate spirit as what is moving towards oneness or holds oneness. So it's the universal source. It is the transcended, unifying consciousness that is collective. So it might be, you might call it, you know, God or goddess, you might call it spirit, you might call it source, but it's this sense of there being something so much bigger, and it's the essence, the energy, the pulse of life, the cosmic forces that inhabit absolutely everything. So it's that sort of opening, raising up, transcending towards oneness. So in a kind of way like sameness, but like going back to essence. Whereas soul is the move towards embodiment and the individual. And so I feel like it's coming down. It's coming down to the earth, down to the body, down to becoming more fully yourself and the uniqueness of who you are. So moving away from trying to be the same as everyone, more distinctive, more alive, more individuated. Soul asks, who are you beneath the conditioning? Whereas spirit would ask, how are you part of the whole? How are you? Yeah, how do you belong to wholeness? What what part of your essence is source, is in the collective, the divinity within you. So we're thinking about soul. So soul is this individuation process. It's coming into you. It's looking at, I talk about it like your soul gifts. So like not like your medicine, your magic, like what is yours? And I'm not talking about even your trainings or your tools, but like what is um your your gifts, your qualities, and the way that you uniquely hold and express these is your own medicine. It can include like your eros, your truth, your leadership. What is your sacred role? I think many spiritual spaces and processes accidentally bypass or conflate soul in pursuit of transcendence. But the feminine path, at least as I experience it and have always actually experienced it, it's not about transcending into the light. It's not about leaving the body behind. It's not about like trying to escape being earthbound. It's holding both. It's becoming fully alive in the body, in your humanity, in your sacred individuality, while remaining connected to the whole and to your divine essence. And so, this is what really underpins the work I do and the feminine mystery path that I walk. And this is what I really feel like is so important for us to really grok, because it's not just about sort of getting to know ourselves, even just in the sense of like going in, and down, 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 and getting to know who we are, if we're then not sharing it with humanity. That's the spirit piece. It's both. And so this is why the myth of Inanna resonates like so freaking deeply to me. I've talked about Inanna before on my social media, on this podcast. I've done Inanna temple work. She's been a goddess that I have like actually been in devotion to for a few years, and kind of really only this year, like in the last year, like really recognized that actually she's like my guiding goddess. And I would even perhaps go so far as to say I feel like I'm a priestess of Inanna. So Inanna is our original goddess. She's like her myth was the first authored story that we ever had, written by a woman as well, the high priestess Edwana. I think I said her name right, Edenwana. So Sumerian myth, right? And she was the blueprint for so many of the later goddesses that came, particularly goddesses like Ishtar, Venus, Aphrodite, Freya. So goddesses who hold the light and the dark, love and war, fertility and death, sex and blood. And I just keep coming back to over and over and over again, like, what is the medicine that I hold? What is the truth that I hold? And this came up for me in my recent priestess ordination, where it was a real freaking initiation into, I had to, there was a lot of shadow work involved in that process of like really recognizing and naming and integrating my own shadows, and also claiming medicine. And the place that I just kept coming back to was I hold it all. We all do. When we identify with just one face of the feminine or one face of the goddess or one archetype or aspect, we are denying all of the other parts that we hold. We all hold it all. And I'm like, this is why cycle wisdom has mattered to me for so long, ever since I first discovered it, like 10 years ago. On my sort of, when my spiritual path really opened up, it's the cycle holds it all. So I've just been like, so like ping, 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 seeing how all of these things is just so interconnected. They're all just different maps, different faces, different layers to the same freaking rhythm again and again and again. The path of the feminine, we hold it all. So Inanna is the story that, is the personification as well. So think of like Persephone even. So it's the underworld story. Inanna was the queen of heaven and earth. If you've heard me talk about this on another podcast, I'm only going to talk about this really briefly. And if you've not heard about this before, then I'll pop some links in the show notes for you to come find out more. Inanna, right? She's the queen of heaven and earth. She's loved, admired, respected, married, got a child, got everything she needs, wealth, power, status, everything. And she's like, this isn't enough. So her own soul called her, and she had to strip everything away, give up everything that she held dear, all her power, all of that status, all of her comfort, everything, because she knew there was another process that she had to go through. Really, it's the cycle of transformation, right? Death and rebirth. She knew there was more for her. There was inner work she had to do, healing work she had to do, but not just healing to go down into the darkness and stay there, to come up again. So she had to strip away absolutely everything, fully surrender. She goes into the underworld completely naked, completely bare, and she is killed by her sister, who is the dark feminine goddess. No, again, right? Dark feminine. Oh, it must be bad. She's angry. She's rageful. Actually, she's grieving. But, she's a hysterical woman. And, really, she is the repressed. She's the shadow, right? So Inanna has to go see her shadow self in the underworld. It's not even her sister, it's her shadow self, to see what is real, what has been in exile. She has to make peace with this. And only from there, when she gives up attachment to who she was and owns the fact that there's this shadow side to her as well, there's lessons, there's wisdom, there's healing and power in meeting her shadow, can she be reborn. I'm not going to go into the full story of this, but as she rises, woof, she goes through a powerful rebirthing process. She ascends her throne. She takes back all that was hers and then some more. She doesn't just put her crown back on and sit back on her throne. She reigns in a more aligned, integrous, powerful way than ever before. And the other side to Inanna, although she's really well known, like in our modern neo-spiritual culture, for being the goddess who descended to the darkness, goddess who braved the underworld and chose to go, like, the true story of Persephone, the one where she chose to go instead of being abducted. She's actually like a goddess revered in Sumerian times, in Sumeria, which is Middle Eastern. I believe it's Iran now, that part of the world. And the goddesses who followed since, they aren't just the goddesses of the darkness, of death, of the underworld. They're the goddesses of sex, like powerfully owning their pleasure, their bodies, their sex, their eros. Eros is creative life force, the erotic, not as like filthy sex, but as life force in the body, the pulse of life, Shakti, Kundalini, this creative power that is in us that we have been absolutely conditioned to be like ashamed of, right? So the thing about Inanna was her priestesses, this is the origin of the red thread. So if you've heard about the phrase the red thread, and it's related to your mother line, actually the red thread is the red priestesses. You might think about the red rose lineage of the Magdalene. Well, Magdalene was a priestess of Ishtar, and Ishtar is the a sort of more later, slightly more recent, but still ancient version of Inanna. And they were the sacred hers, the sacred whores. Their temples were where they held the rites of sex magic to heal through the body, to awaken the creative life force in other people, in community, to raise frequency, to raise consciousness, to amplify healing frequency out in the world. Inanna powerfully embodied her sexuality. She was not afraid of it. And she inspired this whole legacy that we still see today of what we now, have tabooed as sex work, but also in ourselves and our spiritual path where we're reclaiming our sexuality. It all stems from Inanna. This is just the forgotten side. So Inanna goes, she descends to meet the darkness, to strip away what's false. These masks, roles, identities, protections, the inherited stories, survival structures, the way she was told just to settle. Life's good. Like, don't rock the boat. Don't throw it all away just because you greedily want more. Just stay where you are. Like, can you relate to that? Just stay in your relationship. Just stay in your work. Don't risk it. Don't ask for more money. Be grateful for what you've got. Whatever it is, whatever truth comes up for you about asking more versus settling, can you feel where you might have settled, where you might be staying in the upper world instead of actually owning up to what you might really want. Because the point is, when you rise again, you're capable of holding more life, of holding more of your truth, of integrating the parts of you that you had exiled to lead in a way where you trust yourself. And so you're able to create more because you can hold more, be more visible without fear of collapse. You can let your light shine brighter without fear someone is going to come and cut you down. This is why this story matters so much. And to the sacred women space holders that I really work with, this is why the myth is just so powerful, because we're living it all the time in the seasons of the year, in our menstrual cycle, in our soul journeys, in the dark nights of soul. Every single time we're expanding, every time we're putting ourselves out there, every time we're asking more, every time we are challenged and we have to dig in and trust ourselves, it's Inanna at work. And so this brings me on to temple, okay? And why temple is so like everything to me as well. So if you know about me, I've been holding women's circles for 8 years. I took a circle training with Mitlay Southey 8 years ago, and it was incredible. And back then, there were few people holding women's circles. I rocked up to this training and didn't even know why I was there. It was deep soul calling. I heard Mitlay speaking on a podcast and was like, don't know who this woman is. I need to be in this room. She's about to go overseas. It's her last one in this side of the world. I need to go. And I went and I had no freaking idea. I'd never been to a circle. I didn't know what I was doing. It was deep soul calling and far out, changed my life. I've been holding women's circles ever since. But then what happened was I started to get to a point where I felt like we were staying on a certain level of connection. So in circles, it's about listening. It's about hearing each other, like acknowledging, being heard in a way that women are just not heard, right? Sharing the truth, going beyond the masks and the illusions of, yeah, I'm fine, everything's great. And like being real. But then what I noticed was we get attached to those stories, the stories of our lives. We replay them unconsciously because they're not complete in our psyche. And so I got to a point where I was like, how can I drop women down beneath the story, the ego, like personality place, to release attachment from this so that we can actually see the big mythic overview picture of our lives, so that we can contact the shadow beyond the ego and not just do our like healing work, not just integrate the pieces that we'd exiled and like felt ashamed of, by exploring them in a safe, sacred, transformational space, where we could play with embodiment of archetypes, where it's like okay to embody these parts, but also to contact the brilliance. So this is when I found temple, and I'm going to tell you a little story. So temple is transformational sacred space for soul work. It's mythic, and it works on the mythic soul realm. It's a place where we work with archetype, shadow, ritual, embodiment, and psyche. It's a place where fragmented aspects of the self, we can start to reconnect them and bring them back into wholeness and drop, like I say, quickly beneath the personality mind, beneath the parts that you're performing, things that you're known for, the ways that you want to be perceived. It's freaking real. And yeah, it's deeper. And yeah, that can be vulnerable because we're reaching the soul self beneath all that conditioning. It's also profoundly liberating because temple becomes a mirror, a place where your true self is reflected back to you in ways that you can't fully see by yourself. We can't see our own shadow. We can't see our own brilliance. We can't see it because we've already formed opinions of who we are. Doesn't matter how self-aware you are. And this is one of the reasons that I actually then chose to apprentice and become ordained as a temple priestess. Because nowadays, there are circles and ceremonies everywhere, which is beautiful, and they do vary enormously. And some of those places are still perfect for sharing stories, for sharing craft, for ritual, for regulation, for like workshops, even for simply just being heard and witnessed. And I wanted to find a place, to find a technology, to be trained, to master the art of holding circle, but taking it to the place where we're not just being hurt, but we can be changed. And temple has been that for me. This is mastery level of circle holding. And I found it in America. I trained in it, apprenticed in it, and have fully devoted myself. And for the last 3 years, I've been literally waking up in the middle of the night in Australia to train in temple work with American teachers because one, I wanted it. I wanted that depth for myself. I wanted the skills. I wanted the experience. And I want it because I believe that we are ready for it. And I know that sisters, my community, want it too. But then came the opportunity, or more like we just made the opportunity to actually learn to become a temple guide training teacher myself. So I'm going to be the first person who is taking this training outside of America, outside of from my teacher. And I'm bringing it to Australia. I'm going to be running it online with an in-person retreat in Australia because I genuinely believe that women are ready for this level of sacred holding and sacred leadership. And I know that our communities, our women, in this day and age, we are ready to go deeper into temple. We just need the priestesses to remember their role as temple keepers. And we need these priestesses, these women, these space holders to create these temples, create these experiences and offer these places so that we can all do this deeper soul work, the mythic inner alchemy, the embodied transformation, the descent and rising. And everyone will do temple in completely their own way. They don't all look like mine, just so you know. For me, though, what I'm doing now is I'm weaving together all of these parts and I'm offering an online full moon initiatory temple journey, the Temple of Inanna. We're going to go online through 4 months, 4 gates, 4 phases of Inanna's journey. We're going to enact it through descent, death with the exiled feminine, ecstatic rebirth, and then rising with our golden shadow. We're beginning next Friday, the 29th of May, with our opening ceremony. And inside this journey, you're going to have a full lived live temple experience every month. There's going to be monthly initiation temples to really activate and invoke the frequency and for us to walk, enact Inanna's path. Then there's going to be a whole load of integration, sister circles for witnessing, but also practices, embodiment, ritual, shadow and golden shadow work. There's going to be holding for this mythic process, not to go in and stir the pot and so we can like just stay in the inner work, but it's so that we rise. It's so that we step into our brilliance. It's so that we can do our work. It's so that we can feel deeply resourced, self-trusting, capable, competent in our authority to go and do actually what we were always bloody here to do. I'm beyond passionate about this. I believe in this so much. This is open to anyone online. Okay. So if you're wherever you are in the world, if you feel called to come and be held, to experience temple, to walk the path of Inanna, if you are on the cusp of like your expansion, but you're like, oh, wobbly, or you're like, I'm used to doing these things by myself. Or if you're like already in the initiation, but you would actually like holding to see parts of yourself that you haven't quite been able to integrate yet. If you want space to explore these different faces of ourselves, if you want the witnessing and the guiding, but on the soul work, not just the witnessing level, this is for you. So right now I've got non-public pricing available until this Sunday. And this is for women who are on the email waitlist. And then remaining spaces are going to open publicly on Monday. And so it is a short turnaround time because I know if you are ready, if this calls you, if this stirs you, It is time now to act. It's time to move. I'm not going to give like a really long launch time for this because that's just keeping us stuck in our shadow, right? It is time. And so you can find all of the details in the show notes. Also, if you're like putting a little pin in Temple Guide training, if you're like, I'd like to find out more about that, then there's also a waitlist for that. And I'll pop the link to that in the show notes because I don't have dates yet, but it's going to be coming in Southern Hemisphere spring this year or towards the end of this year. I'm just waiting to get all my bits and pieces in a row and get the training completely ready before I can start to set up more dates. That's going to be over, like 6 to 8 months, probably more like 8 months online with a 3-day in-person retreat to really get an in-person experience of Temple and to do a lot of skill practicing and refinement and mastery and for your own soul work. So that's going to be happening in the Southern Highlands, New South Wales, Australia. So, fairly long episode, deep and meaty. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you froth on this kind of stuff, I hope that you've really enjoyed this. And so thanks for listening, love. And a little piece, a little nugget, a little meat on the bones for you to chew over. This week, instead of just asking, like, what am I feeling? What am I aware of? What wounds am I healing? You could also ask yourself, what magnificence have I not yet allowed myself to see? And how do you know it? Take a look around you. Notice what pings you. Notice what spikes strong emotional reactions in you. This could have clues to both your shadow, as in the parts that you have exiled because they feel like gross to integrate, but actually hold immense power. It might hold the keys to your best work, to your most fully expressed self, and also the golden shadow, the parts of you that you admire in others but don't actually believe could be possibly within you. Here's pieces for you to dream into, to like consider, hey, what if that lived in me too? What could actually be possible? All right, my beautiful love, thank you so much for listening. Share this with a sister who also is a deep soul searcher, a mystery diver. Pass this on and I'll catch you next time. Blessed be, beautiful. Thanks for being here. Thank you so much for listening, my love, to Wildflow Podcast. If you found medicine in this episode, please share it on socials and leave a review. If you are a sacred space holder, a coach, a priestess, a healer, come and take the free quiz now to discover your sacred feminine leadership dial. Understand your frequencies is magic and medicine for your soul client, and how to work with your leadership edge so that you can show up in your sacred authority and create the business that holds you so you don't have to hold it all. Until next time, my love, stay devoted to your body and your spirit as sacred guide as you share your unique medicine in this world.